Yeah. Now you're supposed to take it out of Sarah's bucket.
Oh, Sarah.
No, I'm just kidding. I'm saying too bad.
The good news is that that's been done at 375, but we gotta do the schedule now.
So how much they gonna pay us? We'll do it for 375, but
We do the one for 375.
but we want to be paid $1,000 for print. I'm just kidding.
Plus,
I'm just kidding.
State News wants a demo. You don't have to if you don't.
Yeah, we can, if we now we gotta be able to spray cost. How much is it? 375.
375 for the one, and what was the other two?
Jennifer, she coordinates all of it. ER something. We'll just assign Sam to work. Yeah.
I do. I'm gonna cook some these. You know, like
Yeah. Where is at? Yeah.
one is at Noble's Pond,
Yeah.
$55, and the other is at you guys.
Oh yeah, the Denver Dance one. Yeah, that's probably good.
Oh, and who are gonna for that one? He plays 2 tankers and cheese.
The Denver Dance probably.
That's gonna happen.
Yeah.
But if the other one we do,
Coordinate.
we say Brad.
Do me a favor. Coordinate that through Jonathan. I'm all over the back of all this stuff. If there's any issues. Which the ones that we're talking about. Coordinate from Jennifer's any challenges.
And I'm working with, Sasha.
Raise. Use raise one and plus point.
I've had some J, not the
Yeah, that's good.
Unless you want to. If you want to, I can be further on down.
No, so. Yeah, that's so good. We get to go home soon.
Maybe 8 months out like that.
Hey.
I'll let you know what I find out. That just seems.
So we're Friday night.
Yeah, he said I got it. He said he's going Friday.
And he's gonna continue on.
He said the if you send me a I think after
See you again, sweetie.
they're going to do it before they set the walls up, wire.
And I believe
You have to
about a mile south.
Try to get that taken care of.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I don't want to be involved in it. All right, I'll take care of it.
Yeah.
I would stay till they kick me out.
Hey Colin, haven't seen you for a while.
What's up, young man? Guess what tomorrow is? Snippy about the what tomorrow? Guess what tomorrow is? It's something you It's 30 years. I'm excited. It's my last rodeo. That's all. I guess I'm gonna go hang out the woods and everyone. I'm gonna open up happy hour. It's so real estate. No, this is
Okay, so like the bank was
they probably still iron.
Good evening. Welcome to the Kent County Levy Court Committee meeting. Today is Tuesday, June 15th, 2021. We're at 555 Bay Road, Dover, Delaware. Levy Court Chambers, room 203. Tonight are solely committee meetings, no business meeting. But before we start, I'll say we have 7 commissioners present, the county attorney and the county administrator. And before we start with the meetings, we'll have the county administrator explain the rules or how we're going to do the WebEx or phone-in calls.
Thank you, Mr. President. Real briefly, we are sharing this meeting via WebEx to people in the public who are not here. This meeting is being conducted at 555 Bay Road in Dover at the County Administrative Complex. And if you are joining us via WebEx, either on a computer or by telephone, there will be opportunities for public comment in accordance with our agenda. And at those times, we will prompt you on how you can join the meeting. The instructions are this. At this time, if you're on phone, a *3 on your device will raise an electronic hand, and *6 will unmute or mute it's like a toggle. *6 will unmute your phone and will also mute your phone if it is unmuted. And if you're on a computer via WebEx, at the bottom of the screen, there is a symbol for a raise hand that you can press or pick, and we can unmute you, or you can unmute yourself as well at that time. But otherwise, we ask that you keep your devices on mute to keep background noise out of the meeting room. And the last thing I'll say is this, as a public meeting of the Levy Court, is following all rules of procedure, including the Mason's Rules of Order and the Levy Court rules that apply to committee meetings. Mr. President.
Thank you. Prior to the meeting, I spoke to the Finance Committee Chair and the Community Services Committee Chair, and they do not have a problem that we put the Community Services Committee first, as we do have guests here, and we don't want to make them sit through the Finance Committee. So, first item on the agenda this evening will be Mr. Sweeney, Community Services Committee.
Thanks, sir. Tonight we have joining with us Mr. Alexander and Ms. Gaines. So if you guys want to come down to the podium. Mr. Shepard is also involved from the Community Services respect. Willow Run Rotan Club is a building out west of Wyoming that was the community center for the area, and the Rotan owned it. I believe the Rotan is now standing, and the entire Rotan is now standing in front of us at the podium. So, Mr. Alexander, I'm going to turn it over to you to make your case, and I'm going to ask Mr. Shepard to step up because he's been out to review the building and to give his assessment as well. So, Peanut, go ahead.
All right. To the Levy Court Commissioners and the County Administrator and other Levy Court personnel, I'm Edwin Alexander, and representing the Willow Run Community Center. Got Kim Gaines with me. She's representing the community. Some of the things the club did for money-making projects in the 60s and 70s, most of the charter members were farmers, so they made most of their money from farming projects they did. In the 80s, they started serving oyster dinners twice a year up till the 90s when oysters got too expensive and they cut out the dinners. Then in the 90s, a few members worked at Dover Downs during race weekend and to raise money for the club. In the early 90s, Rotan National dropped us as a club because we didn't have enough members. That is when it became the Willow Run Community Center. The club then started driving shuttles for the fair and parking for the west parking lot. As the fair changed from tractors running the shuttles to pickups, it kind of took the club out of the picture. We still had the parking lot, but that was not enough to pay expenses such as insurance and repairs. And Kim's going to tell you about some of the activities the club did when It was in full motion.
Thank you. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for entertaining us tonight and allowing us to be here. My name's Kim Gaines. And as Mr. Alexander said, I'm here representing the community. And in the most endearing way possible, I call this community center the less fortunate man's country club. I practically grew up in this building and on this property. And it's here that, if any of you guys know me, I've learned my strong sense of volunteerism and community service through this community center, previously the Roritan Club. Just to paint a picture a little bit, because I think the history of it does desire to be shown here. Oyster dinners were done. We had donkey ball games. You talk about fun times, rodeos. I can't tell you how many birthday parties I've attended at this facility, weddings, post-funeral gatherings. It's just amazing. We had such a strong community out there west of Camden and Wyoming. Every year we had an annual Christmas dinner up until 2 years ago. And back in my, I guess, elementary and junior high days, the 4-H club held monthly dances for the school-age children. And that was a big success, and we were very grateful for that. Currently, up until it closed its doors December 31st, 2019, it served as a meeting place for the Westville 4-H Club, and also prior to that, the Mid-State 4-H Club, and also the Tax Ditch Committee. I attended the Westville 4-H Club in that building as a child, and for the last 13 years as a parent volunteer and as a leader. I'm not privy to what the Tax Ditch does as far as, thanking the facility for meeting there on their however often they meet there. But I just want to kind of point out, but in exchange for what we did as the Westville 4-H Club, we do annual road cleanups, we did annual Easter egg hunts, annual Halloween parties, we set up for the Christmas dinners every year. We ran the children's activity table at the Christmas dinner, and we parked cars at the fair for many, many years. And I say all of this because there's been a little bit of misconception, I think, through the grapevine that the 4-H's role in the community center has been diminished. And I can say that when the obligation changed from parking cars to driving the shuttles, obviously, not a lot of women are happy to drive tractors and trucks with a lot of people on a shuttle through a very crowded fairground. So a lot of that responsibility fell on our dads, and our dads were also the ones driving the livestock trailers. So we really honestly did not have that many people to help at that time. But until then, we were very, very active in the community center as well. 3 or 4 years ago, as membership became less and less, and before we knew the proper channels of how this all was supposed to work, the 4-H Foundation was approached to see if they wouldn't be interested in taking over this facility. And at that time, they seemed pretty interested. Again, we didn't know the proper channels, and I don't know if they're interested at this time or not. I'm not sure. But this building and the property have meant a lot of things to a lot of people. And we only hope that the next generation gets to experience even a portion of what I did as a child. So, thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Kim, before you step away, are there any questions for either Mr. Alexander or Ms. Gaines at this time? Seeing that, Kim, so just go ahead, Mr. Pepper.
Just one. Can you give us a description of the building? And some of the commissioners up here aren't familiar with it. Basic description about how big it is, how big the lot is, the facilities that it has.
The building, the main hall is like 25 to 28 square foot. The kitchen area is probably, 800 square feet. And then it's got like a utility room in the back, which is probably 600-700 square feet. And it consists of about 6 acres there. And it's got a pavilion. It's, I think it's like 24 by 40 or something like that.
It has a kitchen, right?
Yeah, it has a kitchen. And
do you know if the kitchen's been inspected?
Yes.
And it passed? Everything good?
Yeah.
And it has men's and women's bathrooms?
Yes.
Okay. Are they ADA compliant?
They're not handicap accessible right now, though.
Okay. Okay, thanks. Before we move on to Mr. Shepard, so Ms. Gaines, you have some ideas, don't you?
Well, maybe.
Yeah. You ready to share something?
Well, it's kind of a couple things. I don't know if, again, this is just so near and dear to my heart. I don't know if fundraising would help the county restore the building and then perhaps bequeath it to a nonprofit organization. I don't know if the 4-H has any interest in helping with the maintenance. Financially, I know like Kent County 4-H, financially can't do squat. But certainly we have a very active Kent County 4-H, and I know some of you guys are pretty familiar with some of us. And, there is a possibility that we could speak with the 4-H and make it a volunteer situation where, as far as helping to maintain the building or, painting or planting flowers or just some of the upkeep. I didn't know where this was going to dive, so I didn't really look into that, but I'm sure there's help to be had because the community, several members have already said, what are we doing? What's going on? How can we help? What's going on? So it just means a lot to a lot of people.
Thank you. So as I said, Mr. Shepard and I think Mr. Rigby did an assessment. So Jeremy, if you want to add your 2 cents.
Yeah, if by assessment you mean we did visit the facility and take a look around, and we certainly did do that. It's been quite a while, with COVID and all. We finally, it's been over almost a year and a half or 2 years now, so amazing how time flies. So yes, we did go out. We took a look at the facility. It was, I was impressed, especially when you talk about the nostalgia of the place, because it certainly, is dated, which is not a problem. It's just a dated facility. We looked at the grounds. The grounds were in good condition. The pavilion probably needs some attention at certain points. Limited parking, which is not a big deal because I'm sure that the events, that were taking place, at least within the last decade or so, probably weren't that well attended. When Mike Rigby and I got back, we tried to think of, what could community services, do with a facility like that. And as I've stated before, and I'll still stand here and say it again, there's really not much community services can do for it. A majority of our programming is obviously centered, in the more urban areas of Kent County, recreation center, other businesses around town and in our parks specifically. Imagining Kent County Parks and Recreation programming events or classes, fitness or other kind of classes that far west of town is probably a stretch at best. And it's kind of disappointing for me to say that because, I know, and especially hearing how fond people are of the facility and the memories that were created there, have to take a realistic look at what we do, how we provide it, where people will likely go to partake in those types of services. And, I hope, for everybody's sake that maybe there is a quality use for the facility that, kind of resurrect it and keep it more long-term. I just don't know specifically right now what community services can do for that.
Thanks, Mr. Shepard. I see Mr. Vasquez in the back of the room. Sam, can you step up to the podium? Do you mind? Sorry to put you on the spot.
That's okay. How you doing?
All right, how are you? Thanks for stepping up. So because community services says not very much in programming, if this building were to become an asset of the county, right off the top of your head, do you see anything that we could do there publicly or community-wise?
I don't. I believe it's Westover, Hartley area?
Oh, even farther south than
West
that.
of Camden, okay. I can't imagine at this point in time what we would do out in that area. Certainly the condition of the building would be, and what kind of expenses would be involved, that sort of thing. Certainly don't have a problem at all heading out there, taking a look and doing an assessment, if you'd like that. But in terms of use, I can't imagine gun club, hunting club, things of that nature, would cross my mind. 4-H was mentioned. So, yeah.
So as we start to open back up from COVID, are we starting to get any requests from the public to use our facilities here? Yeah, sorry, Mr. Pettit.
Of course.
So they're starting to come back.
Yes.
I mean, is this a location that we could use in addition to this building?
Yeah, perhaps. I may take a little different view of it as a county facility and a recreational amenity. It may not our typical program involving balls and nets and stuff like that, but there's a tremendous amount of recreational activity that occurs just in the outdoors and learning about nature and things of that nature. What was talked about regarding 4-H is a magnificent program here in Kent County, and means a lot to a lot of people and educates a lot of young people about all sorts of things, not just farming or agriculture, but sciences and how to behave and how to make things. So there's a lot of opportunities for a facility like this that may not be what we're used to providing. Sam just mentioned gun club. I'm not sure we would go that far, but you think about things like archery or other activities. We sponsor every year. We sponsor the Envirothon, which is a environmental education competition with youth, high school youth, whether or not it would have some potential use there. We'd have to explore those options and see what would work. So I wouldn't totally discount it. It would not be a place where we would, if someone's asking for a meeting room, we wouldn't say, well, we have one down at the Ruritan Club, and they'd be like, where's that? We want to meet in your county building. So, but other uses.
Commissioner Pepper.
One of the things a couple of things that come to my mind is drones are getting to be fairly big, and drone racing and that kind of thing. And out in the country like that, and 5 acres, be a nice facility for use of drones and drone racing. And also, we always have folks come in with the remote control airplanes. That would be a safe facility and a larger facility for them to fly their planes and whatever else they fly. And I think that'd be a good location for that as well.
Any other questions? Any other comments? Commissioner?
I do, if I may. As we would any property, I would suggest that if we were going to, seriously consider taking this property, that we agree that there be some due diligence period where we could do some investigation of the property so that Levy Court knows if there are things that we would need to or want to fix or address early on. We could develop a budget for that. And it was mentioned just a minute ago, the ADA bathrooms, for example, aren't there presently. There may be other things we want to do. I'm not sure the parking or, what it looks like, bathroom, the condition of the septic system, the well, things of that nature. We should just kind of get a sense of what we're, from a budgetary standpoint, what we're going to be needing to make it work.
Commissioner Buxton.
I would just like to say what Mike just said.
Really? That's it?
Let me articulate a couple other things then. I don't think that we're prepared to make any decision tonight, correct?
I don't think we're going to make a decision tonight, but I think what we could do is make the decision for Mr. Vasquez, Mr. Shepard, and Mr. Petitmange to start the assessment process to see what is entailed in taking ownership of the building.
The assessment for me to make a decision would need to be a couple things. Because the 1-2 is clear, right? Certainly like to, right? But in order to make a proper decision, what I would like, is to have a very clear understanding of the cost associated with moving in and then the cost associated with owning it. It doesn't have to pay for itself, but it can't be out of whack, in my opinion, right? I don't necessarily think it's a recreational or community service lane. It can be other, because I think there's other county benefits. But I first need to understand I don't need to know those tonight, but the conditions of the parking lot. Is it on septic? And what does that involve? How's the roof? Costs associated with ADA? All of those things combined. And then secondary to that, I think we have to have a very clear understanding, or at least an understanding of what the uses would be. Because I don't think we should take over a structure or property that has 2 or 3 key events targeted, and then that's kind of it, because we have to maintain it. So that's what I would look for to make a proper decision. That's all.
Commissioner Angel.
Thank you, Commissioner Sweeney. I'm thinking outside the box here of something totally different, like maybe a future paramedic place in that area. Have the building there, so it's got 5 acres, it can grow. We can use it for storage too, for if we get overloaded here in Dover. So I'm looking at it in a different realm for the county. Just want to throw it out there.
Commissioner?
Sir?
One other thing, because maybe it was articulated, I'm not sure. If by chance tonight was the decision-making process, would the process be that it would be deeded over for $1 or something along those lines? Where are we expecting to purchase the property?
They're planning on giving it to us.
So we would assume ownership at a cost of a nominal fee of sorts. And if we didn't accept it, you do have the ability, someone has the ability to sell it?
We're not really sure.
No, we don't have the ability to sell it on account of we don't even know who owns it. So we'd have to come to the county to find out who really owns it, because last one I heard owns it is Bill Looney, and he's passed away.
Yeah, but he told me that I could have it, so I'll...
Yeah, right. So
just checking that. Thanks.
Mr. Howe.
Thank you. I think Mr. Buxton just clarified something. I just wanted to make sure we're talking about this basically being deeded over to the county as opposed to us buying it, right? Right? Okay.
It is intriguing. It does have some potential. I just, expense-wise, want to understand it. Thanks.
And that's on Fire Tower Road, right?
No. Horsepen.
They had a pole there as recently as 2000, maybe 6 or 8. A polling location was there. Yes. Yeah. So I remember going to it. It might have had 3 voters in that district, but I went to it.
Mr. Chairman.
Sir.
Just was mentioned that there may not be clear ownership, and I just quickly asked the county attorney if he would address that matter, because we may need to have some title work done.
Yeah, I would recommend that we look into the title, figure out who the owner is. We could take a quitclaim deed from a putative owner, but if our title was no better than that, I wouldn't recommend putting a whole lot into it. Of course, if we can get a pristine title from someone or some entity, that's a different matter, and then we would, I think, be in a better position to make an investment. But a title search, I think, would go a long way to help us figure out, the right approach here. I'll leave it at that.
So for the most part, Counselor, the building itself is owned by the Willow Run Ruritan Club. If the Willow Run Ruritan has been disavowed by Ruritan National, then it falls back to the existing club. Has a care of Bill Looney, who obviously has passed away. but the Willow Run Ruritan Club is sitting in that chair right there by himself. So I know that this was looked into in like the Viola Ruritan.
Right.
Because they're starting to wane in membership also. And the national club would get involved if they were still engaged with that club, which they're not. So.
We may have to check entity status, if it's moribund, could we resurrect the entity, things like that. A thorough title search would probe all of those issues.
Are there any other questions? So what I'm just looking for now, and I think for Mr. Alexander and Ms. Gaines, is the consensus to have our administration move forward with any kind of assessment of the building and the property, and then come back with an estimate of what it would cost us to take possession moving forward. Does that seem reasonable? According to Mr. Buxton's request.
We are authorized to proceed with the title search?
That does cost money, so yes.
It does. It's not exorbitant, but it will probably run maybe $800.
Yeah, probably less than that.
Okay.
Is that not nitpicking because it is less than that? Is there merit in going out and taking a general look in advance of that? Because if it's way obvious that there's major problems?
I think we're going to do both. A physical assessment plus the title search. A hand, show of hands. I see 7 hands. Thank you. So before I turn this over for public comments, I would like to mention that Ms. Gaines had her groundbreaking this morning for the new Forest Avenue Animal Hospital on, I guess, West Forest Avenue off of Route 8. It was very well attended. Kim, you did a great job. Congratulations, and we look forward to when you guys are open and ready for ribbon cutting. Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, if I could ask a question before we go to public comment. Could we have 60 days to report back?
Sure. Yep, 60 days. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. So any public comment on this issue? Any public comment? Anybody on the phone? Mr. Kennedy? Sure.
So just to kind of paint a picture after you were speaking about other things that could be done, if you were to embrace it so that you could do the drones or the airplanes, or if you would open it back up to Kent County 4-H, some of the things that would benefit the 4-H that they could do there is they could do archery competitions. They do sleepovers for livestock judging. We do our banquets. All these things right now we're doing at the fairgrounds, and it's very costly, and it keeps getting more costly. And again, I don't know 4-H budget. I'm just a parent volunteer and a leader. But those things would really behoove the 4-H greatly if that was available, if that space was available to them for those sorts of things. I know a lot of the 4-Hers, especially after COVID, having trouble finding places to meet. As their clubs are growing and they're meeting in their homes and they're outgrowing their homes. And the Party Center is an amazing facility, but again, it's booked up all the time. And it's really hard to get even a spot in there for meetings and those sorts of things. The STEM projects that are going on, the robotics, those kind of programs are just growing and growing and growing. So it would really benefit Kent County 4-H in particular in that aspect. So thank you.
Thanks, Kim. Anybody, Mr. Kennedy?
There are no participants at this time.
Thank you, sir. So adjourn the community services. Back to you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Thank you for coming in. Now, you're welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting if you'd like.
Appreciate the opportunity. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Run.
Thank you for coming in. All right. We'll go back to Finance Committee. Mr. Masson, turn it back over to you.
The first item on the Finance Committee agenda is Ordinance LC 21-12, an ordinance authorizing the issuance of Kent County refunding revenue bonds in the amount not to exceed $3,500,000 for the benefit of the Charter School Incorporated, doing business as Campus Community School, to refinance its high school facility located at 350 Pear Street in Dover, Delaware, which ultimately is scheduled for public hearing on June 22nd, 2021. Mr. Pettit-Demange?
Thank you, Chairman Maston. We've invited our bond counsel, Emily Nina, to be with us tonight, and Emily's approaching the podium right now, and she's going to tell us a little more about why this is before you this evening, and what our obligations are with respect to the refunding of this bond. Emily, good to see you.
Thank you. Good to see everyone tonight. As Mr. Pettit-Demange said, I'm Emily Ninen. I'm a partner at Ballard Spahr, and I serve as bond counsel to the county. The application before you for consideration was submitted by Charter School, Inc., which you might know better as Campus Community School. This is for issuing bonds as a conduit issuer for their benefit, and it is to refinance their 2011 bonds, which the county did issue. So they're being refinanced for debt service savings. The interest rates have gone down quite a bit. And I should mention Carolyn Lyon, the business manager from the school, is here to answer any additional questions, but they expect the interest rate to be cut in half. So this would give them quite a bit of savings. When the county serves as a conduit issuer of bonds, it is not debt of the county. The bonds are sold on the credit of the borrower, in this case, the school, and you are just facilitating their ability to access the tax-exempt market and that lower interest rate. It is a federal tax code requirement. So that's why the bonds are issued by the county, and technically it's purchased by the bond purchaser. In this case, there's an underwriter who will sell the bonds, and that purchase price, which comes back from the underwriter, is then loaned by you to the school. So that's just a little description of the structure. I'm happy to answer any questions. There is no limit on the amount of bonds that you can issue as the county for 501c3 organizations. So the reason the school qualifies for tax-exempt bonds is because they are a 501c3 nonprofit organization. You have done similar deals more recently for Delaware State University. That is the same structure that we're using here. So I will stop there and answer any questions.
Any commissioners have questions? Commissioner Angel?
Thank you. Well, Emily, 20 years ago, when I was on the Capital School Board, they sent me to say no against the charter school because of reasons stated. And I learned at that time that when the bond was appropriate, that there was a fee that the Levy Court received. Does that happen with the refinance too?
Yes, it's a 1/4% of the par amount of the bonds. So here the bonds are $3.5 million. I'm not doing the math. Susan may know offhand, but let me do it really quickly.
It was somewhere around $8,400 or something.
Yeah.
How much, Mr. Pettit-Demange?
I believe it was around $8,400.
Yes, $8,750.
All right. Is that something we haven't discussed, but is that something we're going to give back to the school, or are we going to take that then and apply it to a program here in our county?
Well, typically it would just become, part of the general fund revenue, unless you created a special purpose for it.
Okay, I guess that's going to be a further discussion then. Just want to get it on the record. Thank you, Emily.
Any other questions? No further questions then? Back to you, Commissioner Pepper. Oh, I'm sorry.
If I could just to remind Levy Court, this ordinance was introduced last time we met, and it's set for public hearing next week. And so just wanted to make sure that everyone understood that. Thank you.
Back to you, Commissioner Maston, to see if we want to move it forward to the public hearing.
Show of hands to move this forward. 7. Next item on the agenda is fiscal year 21, 22, and 23 audit contract. Mrs. Durham?
Good evening. Every 5 years, every 3 to 5 years, it's been every 5 years for quite a while now, we do an RFP for audit services. And this year, was our turn to do the 5-year review. So anyhow, we had 7 companies respond, and I had a team of 5 people review the responses. And this year, we want to award the contract to Clifton Larson Allen we start out with 3 years, and then we go ahead and extend it. In the RFP, they give us prices for 3 years. So for 3 years. Is there any questions or any discussion anybody wants to have about this?
No questions?
It's a pretty boring topic.
That it is.
Story of my life.
Can we have a show of hands to move this forward to the business meeting?
Can this be a consent agenda item? Consent agenda.
7-0.
Thank you.
Next item is fiscal year 22 paramedic training program budget amendment. Mr. Faulkner or Mr. Quayla?
Thank you, Commissioner Maston. So Commissioners, we appreciate very much last week when you approved the amendment to the paramedic trainee program policy, and we are prepared to begin implementation of that. But since no funds were allocated for it, we're a bit reluctant to do that without at least the consensus from the commissioners that they would like us to begin the program. It's unusual to get a budget amendment request before the new year's even started. Fiscal year 22 won't start till July 1st. But we do want to not only assure Good Fellowship Academy that we intend to send 3 students, but to begin the recruitment process for those students. So what we're really looking for tonight is, one, to make you aware of what the potential expense for the program could be. You'll see it's about $165,000. That's our estimate for the tuition, the incentives, the uniform costs, and the like. That doesn't include potential salary. As you know, we have about 7 positions vacant right now. Colin's been able to recruit a couple. We're losing one to retirement, so might still be 7. We're going to go ahead and start 3. If you approve this, commit to start 3 in the Good Fellowship Training Academy, and really try to begin the process of recruiting students in their 2nd year, either at Del Tech or Chesapeake College, and begin the process with them. As you recall from the program, they'll be entitled to be compensated. We will pay them a salary along with benefits while they're in school. The cost for that, like I said, it's the current positions, although I wouldn't want to suggest that if we were able to hire 7 fully trained paramedics, that we wouldn't want to proceed with that, and we would need to come back and get some extra funding to pay for the tuition and salary or the salaries at least of the students we have. So tonight we're here to ask, 1, for an endorsement to proceed with the recruitment of these positions and ultimately the expenditure of these funds as we move forward. And then we will bring a formal budget amendment to you. As the county attorney will tell you, you will actually need to hold a hearing in order to amend the budget. So that would be an ordinance that would need to be introduced. And I'm happy to turn it back to you, Commissioner Maston.
Any questions from the commissioners? Commissioner Angel.
Thank you, Mr. Quayla. At the last meeting, we were told with the retirement of that person going out, there was going to be 9 open slots, basically. We're talking about 7 to 8 right now. Are we trying to recruit a non-trainee, that somebody that's in the field also to fill these slots?
Yes. as I mentioned, if we're able to hire all, like I said, we just started 2, so that's why I'm saying 7, but who knows how many may retire before the next time we see each other. So our intent, if we could fill every slot, we would do that, and we would still request that we proceed with the salary, the compensation for the students, and the enrollment of these students. It takes about a year to complete the program, and it's likely that there will be some vacancies at that point. We do understand that the potentially would be that there would be no vacancies, and we may be in a situation where we would have to tell them we don't have a position for them at that time.
Have you received any confirmation yet from Representative Carson on the amount of money he's given to all 3 counties? Can this be utilized for what we're doing?
I did hear you speak about that, but no, I haven't heard any more. Perhaps the chief has.
I have not. I'll get a contact with him. Thank you.
Any other questions from the commissioners?
Commissioner Maston, so what we're seeking obviously is not an amendment, but at least endorsement, support, if you could verbalize that, in us essentially authorizing us to proceed with this program, fully aware that this expense will be encumbered by staff.
Show of hands to move this forward to the business meeting, the consent agenda? 7 up.
Thank you.
Are there any public comments about the ordinance, the audit, or the paramedic trainee program, either here or online?
I see no participants on the WebEx call at this time.
Okay, I'll adjourn this portion of the Finance Committee and turn it back to President Pepper.
Thank you. We'll move on to Planning Services Committee. Mr. Buxton, Chair.
Good evening, Commissioners. I believe the last time I was here, I mentioned that we anticipated a request from the town of Woodside to also take on property maintenance code enforcement within the town. We have received that request. This is very simple. It's identical to what you considered for Little Creek, I believe just last month. They've got 1 or 2 properties that are a problem and they could use our help. We have the capacity to bring it on. I would encourage we do so. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Questions? We've been through this a couple times now, so that's good stuff. Commissioner Sweeney.
Thanks, sir. So Woodside's in my district. I've talked to a few of the council members. They are very much in favor of this to move forward with the county. So this is property maintenance. This isn't code enforcement, correct?
It is, those are one and the same. It is
Okay.
code enforcement, right? We already do building code.
Right.
This would do property maintenance code, so code enforcement.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Any other questions? Show of hands to move forward. Looking like 7-0. Thank you, Ms. Kiefer. Are there any public comments? How about on WebEx?
I see no hands raised on the WebEx call at this time.
Well, back to you, Mr. President.
Thank you. We'll move on to Administration Committee. Mr. Angel.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Pettimaz, finally we got it on board. It's all you, sir.
Thank you, Commissioner Angel. Mark, do you have that PowerPoint? And you're probably going to need to advance it when I say advance it. But so in the
Mike.
Yes, sir.
Can I interrupt you for a second?
Sure.
We have a guest in the house. You might
Oh,
want to
yes, we
introduce.
do. Hey, it's City Councilman Bogarty is with us. Andre, you want to say a few words?
Greetings. Thank you for your patience. I am multitasking. I hope this is not being recorded, but according to City Council, I'm on a quick break. Because I was sitting in a parking lot during my whole City Council time because I wanted to make sure I got here. First and foremost, my name is Andre Bogarty. I'm the newest City Council member at large here in the city of Dover. I've just been named liaison to Levy Court, so I'm super excited to work with you all to get just of how do we partner together. I know there's a partnership now forming. In fact, we were just discussing it with one of our positions being eliminated, and it's coming over to the Levy Court side. So looking forward to learning a lot. Again, I'll give you my number. My phone number is 302-943-5118. For those who still use ink pens or you just want to add it to the phone. Again, I am super excited. I'm now the chair of our Parks and Rec Commission and Community Enhancement for the City of Dover. So I'm looking forward to working with that in that area as well. But again, anything you need or anything really we can partner with and learn more about. I recognize a few names for my son's playing baseball. He's a nurse now. Yeah, he's an RN. That motivates me to stay healthy. And I recognize other names as well. If you have any questions for me, I'm open to answer any questions. I don't want to delay your time at all. Anyone has any specific questions for me?
Yeah, just how'd you end up in Dover, Delaware?
How did I end up in Dover, Delaware? I'm a proud member of the United States. Well, was a member, veteran of the United States Air Force. I'm originally from Detroit. On February 17th, I pulled at Dover Air Force Base. February 17th, 1992, I pulled into Dover Air Force Base, and I never looked back. Dover's my home. It's going to be my home. And anybody who knows me knows I love Dover. Been involved in the area, whether it's primarily through coaching, and that's where my volunteerism pretty much started. So that's how I got here. Not going anywhere. Any other questions?
Yeah, thank you, sir. Just so, Mr. Bogarty, I have 2 subdivisions that are adjacent to the city of Dover.
Okay.
And get city of Dover services.
Yes.
I will be in contact.
Oh, okay. So we listen. You have my vote as well. So I mean, we'll look into it. Let's make it happen. Outside of that, again, I am I'm on the Downtown Development Partnership Safety Committee. So we're looking to continue to evolve downtown. But I'm really enjoying this. It's busy, but I'm really enjoying it. And feel free again to contact me anytime, any questions. I'm a man who loves to serve my community. My platform was all voices, all people, one Dover, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart. So, all right.
Go ahead, Mr. Buxton.
What was the last part of your cell phone number? Last part?
302-943-5118, 5118. Mm-hmm. And just for the record, I'm an HR guy by trade. I do employee and labor relations, so I argue for a living all day. So I do that, deal with unions, collective bargaining agreement, and I love that craft as well. So I went to Wilmington University after I completed my Air Force career, and then ultimately received my undergrad and master's degree. And I've been employed I was the director of human resources for Family Court for the state of Delaware, and then the federal government kind of called me back, and I couldn't pass up the deal. So I work for the federal government now in the field of human resources, and employee and labor relations. So,
well, welcome to Levy Court, and I will be contacting you too, since you have something to do with the parks. You and Fred and Miss Arndt. That the other new
yes, Councilwoman Art. She's super hyper intelligent, man. When she talks, I'm like, what she said. Okay. So she's making it really easy. Yeah.
And I live between 2 of your employees that work for the city too.
Okay.
The PR person and the city clerk.
Okay.
So we're very close in that neighborhood. So we'll be getting up with you.
Yeah, we're gonna miss Miss McDowell when she leaves. She's been a great onboarding supporter and kind of helping me out a lot. So as long as I get her number afterwards, I'll be fine. So
when is she retiring?
Too soon. I think August, I believe, but it's too soon. But August, yeah. So she didn't go for the buy-in and ask could she give me like a year, but she said no.
She lives 2 doors down, but I hardly see her other than when she's going to work at 6 o'clock in the morning and
Yeah.
coming home late or
You
early,
know,
so.
I told her she has a grandbaby. I said, you know what, I'm a grandfather now, and if my grandbaby called me and said they want McDonald's right now, I'm leaving all you all and go through that. So it's nothing like that life. So, yeah.
Mr. Sweeney?
Just 2 more things. First of all, thank you for your service.
Thank you.
And for staying in Dover. We appreciate it.
You're welcome.
My son-in-law met my daughter when he was stationed at Dover and then took her away from me. And 20 years she's been traveling the world. So
Wow.
they're in San Antonio. We're going to go see her in a couple weeks.
Good.
Your phone number, second thing, 302-543?
943 5118. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Any other questions?
Yeah, just a comment. Commissioner Angel, Commissioner Hall, and myself, we all represent parts of the city of Dover. I represent all of Dover, being the commissioner at large for King County. And prior to COVID, we got together regularly with different ones on city council and the mayor and discuss issues that impact both of us.
Okay.
So hopefully once we get past this COVID thing and can start meeting on a regular basis,
Yeah.
we'll do that again, because they were very worthwhile, and because there's a lot of things that the county and the city have in common that we need to know, who's on what base.
Yeah, I have the benefit of working from home full time, 100%, so I'm extremely flexible. And I know Governor Carney just pretty much lifted, or he's providing a date. I didn't read the article, so we're good to go. I look forward to joining you all. And working with
That'd be great. We look forward to getting together with you.
Yes, sir.
Be great.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Just one more thing. Because of our Polytech connection.
Yeah.
And some of the others, tomorrow will be my last day at Polytech.
No.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
30 years. Walking
30
out the
years,
door
yeah.
at 12 o'clock. It's been a good run.
It's been a good run.
Thanks to young
Yeah.
folks like your
Yeah.
young man. So
Yeah,
that's great.
yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. President.
Thank you for giving back. That's a yeoman's position and work in the education field. God bless you. So,
Any further questions? Mr. Pettermosh.
No questions. I just want to thank Mr. Bogarty for being with us this
Thank
evening. He was originally planning to get here before the meeting.
Yeah.
We talked about this a week or so ago.
Yeah.
And, but city council came up with a meeting that you had to go to. But he said he still wanted to come and he would be a little late. So I'm glad you were able to show up and meet everyone. And you bring great energy to city council. And I'm not sure. I think I'm the only one on the dais that actually lives in the city. And Lori, we live in the city there. And Sarah over here as well. So we're your constituents. So thank you for being here.
Well, it's been great. I'm going to go put my video back on right now. But if there's anything I can do for any area, please don't hesitate to call me. And thank you. Thank you for your patience, and thank you for the opportunity to speak with you all, right? All right, thank you. If you see somebody sitting in a parking lot, that's just me finishing up my city council meeting, multitasking. All right? Thanks, and praying for you all. Stay safe.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Mr. Pettermosh, we can get back to American Rescue Plan.
Okay. Yes. Back in late March, I gave you a briefing on the fundamentals of the ARPA Act, and let you know back then that the Treasury Department was working on guidance. And so that guidance was released in the latter part of May, and it's called the Interim Final Rule. It's 151 pages of interpretive language. It basically is a guide to local governments receiving the funding. And so what I provided for you in your packet this past weekend, is a summarization of essentially the 6 categories, broad categories, where recipients of funding through ARPA can use those funds. And they were detailed just in summary in the memo. And the goal here is really to, number one, elevate your awareness and the allowances and the limitations of the funding that we've received. Secondly, to begin a dialogue amongst commissioners about some of the priorities you may see as you understand the limitations and the opportunities that the funding presents. and then ultimately identify those priorities in more systematic and programmatic way. Some things that you may come up with, ideas you may want to explore, may take a little work at the staff level and come back with alternatives or processes on how they might work. But right now, I'd just like to go briefly over those 6 areas that are identified in the Act. And Mark, if you could just progress. So here they are in just a graphic. And the one that I did not highlight in my memo is that top yellow one. It says support for public health response. There is obviously an emphasis on providing, one of the intentions here was to provide funding to support things like medical response, public safety response, and a lot of the discussion in the dialogue, in the interim rule regarding this particular one seems to be, except for the public safety aspects, a little bit outside of our realm of services. But I put it on this graphic because it is one of the areas that you could direct funding to, in addition to mitigating negative economic impacts, revenue reduction, offsets for areas we've lost revenue, transfer to other units of government like the state or local governments. There's opportunity to transfer funding to special purpose entities, and we'll go over that in a minute. Infrastructure expenditures, and premium pay for essential workers. Next slide, please. So, and these are just very basic bulleted of what's in your memo. Support for the health response. These are the types of things that are intended to go towards. So if Levy Court were to wish to direct funding towards some type of public health response, or some agency that has indicated they need assistance, or obviously our own public safety impacts moving forward, those are qualified expenses under the Act. Next slide. Mitigating negative economic impacts. This is probably one of the more broadly worded and broadly available areas of funding that you can kind of be creative with. It talks in broad terms about assistance to households that have been impacted negatively. It could be through job loss, it could be through a death of a family member, a breadwinner, that sort of thing. Mortgage foreclosure, ultimately, or paying bills. Small businesses, grant programs, loan programs, all these sorts of tools are possible. Nonprofit organizations, similarly, grants to nonprofits that have suffered loss or negative impacts as a result of the pandemic and closure of facilities. And special industries that are called out in the bill: tourism, travel, and hospitality, because obviously those with the shutdown were tremendously impacted. It's not limited to those industries, but those industries are specifically referenced in the law. Next slide. Revenue offsets. I mean, it's pretty direct. You can recover any losses that we've incurred since the pandemic began. The official date that the Act recognizes for this purpose is March 3rd moving forward. And there's a variety of ways that you can measure your lost revenue impact. One would be to compare your most recently completed pre-COVID year and the revenues that were generated that year, and then compare to the future. You could take a 3-year average, or the bill allows you to just assume a 4.1% increase annually. This is a national average on revenue production across the country, and you can apply that to your most recently completed non-COVID year, 4% above revenue from that year, and remunerate yourself and your government for those losses. Next slide. Premium pay to essential employees. The emphasis here are regarding employees that have jobs that brought with them high risk with respect to working through the pandemic. And, in our world, we have two groups that are in our ordinances as essential. Those are the paramedics and public safety workers and the wastewater workers. You'll recall back in April when we developed a business response plan to COVID, we elevated our housekeeping and custodial staff to essential for sanitation purposes and double down on cleaning and that sort of thing in all of our facilities. What the law allows you to do is to remunerate these people for acknowledging the risk that they undertook, particularly in the early days of the pandemic when there was so much unknown about how the disease spread, and we had people working in high biohazard contact jobs that you could allow up to $13 an hour of premium pay above base for those individuals and a maximum of $25,000 per year of additional pay. And the emphasis here also is, and it's a common thread throughout the Act, is that there's a direct correlation, and there's studies by the federal government that demonstrate that people that tend to be in these high-risk jobs also tend to be low and moderate income. And so greater emphasis on this premium pay, addressing those lower paid employees, particularly who are in high-risk jobs. Next slide. Infrastructure investments. The law allows for investment in any type of infrastructure that involves water quality improvements that could qualify for federal funding, which is pretty broad. Anything that would qualify for state or federal revolving loan funds, either through clean drinking water or clean water, water pollution reduction. So drinking water improvements, sanitary sewer, stormwater, and along with stormwater management, it talks about green infrastructure projects that you want to incorporate into stormwater features, returning water back to natural systems, and even climate change and its impact on utility infrastructure. You can spend money on projects that enhance your resiliency to climate change, that enhance your resiliency to flood impacts, and those sorts of things. And so we can be thinking about those kind of projects when we're moving forward and think about infrastructure. Broadband internet access, that's a big item as well. And there's a fairly large sum of money coming to the state of Delaware and all states to expand broadband. And I believe I heard today that it was somewhere in the $90 million range coming to the state for broadband. How the state will apply that statewide, but we may play a role in that and partnering with them. And you could use this money for those broadband improvements, partnering with others. Next slide. Okay, so I had a few questions about why would we transfer the money to anybody? Well, put this together just so you know that these are the allowances, not proposing that we do it any particular way. And so this category, transfer to authorized entities, it speaks about nonprofit organizations that have special purposes that are related to public health, and even the response to the pandemic, calls out specifically public benefit corporations that are involved in public transportation, and also cargo transportation, goods and services, moving people and goods around the community around the globe. If there were companies that came to us or you knew companies that were suffering due to the pandemic, we could certainly qualify expenditures under this law for those uses. And then other special purpose units of government, state or local government, that you would want to support or partner with, could involve a transfer of funding out to one of those entities. And so, for example, a few of us talked about off the record or off, out of the meetings, about stormwater impacts. Well, here locally, our primary stormwater agency is the Kent Conservation District. And if we got into a situation where there were some major improvements that we wanted to pursue and partner with the Conservation District, maybe a transfer of money to the district to do those projects. That's what kind of would be allowed under this category, okay? Next slide. Okay, transfer to state government. Why would we transfer any money to the state government? Same thing. If we came on a project such as broadband and the Delaware Information Technologies Office, DTI, was the prime, agency leading that effort, there may be a partnership and a transfer of funding toward that project, or it might be a project that the Delaware State Housing Authority is undertaking with regard to low and moderate income housing or facilities for the homeless. We could transfer money to an outside agency, a state agency like that under the program. So there's nothing up my sleeve other than to let you know that it's possible. Okay. Next slide. And similarly, nothing up my sleeve. This is just a draft budget. I basically took the 6 spending areas I thought applied to us broadly and did a swag budget. I'm not going to tell you what swag means on record, but if you want to know off record, I'll tell you. And so basically, I just said, well, one of the broader categories was this negative impacts category, and it could be a lot of different types of programs, so I put a large piece there, and then I kind of divvied it up. No magic, no special projects already in the works or anything like that, but this just represents the first tranche of money, half of the money that we are ultimately to receive, $17,557,780.50. So that money is in the bank, and it awaits Levy Court's decisions on how we might want to use this money moving forward within the limitations that just have been described. I think that might be the last slide, Mark. Oh, next steps, okay. So next steps would be, identifying some of those things that are most pressing in the community that you know about, and exploring them further, seeing if there's support amongst your other fellow commissioners. Some of these may involve you casting it to the staff and say, find out more about this and bring back some ideas or some proposals that we can further consider. So that's basically all I wanted to share with you tonight and open it up. And ultimately, if we get a list of potential things, similar to what we did with the retreat, we could kind of go through an exercise of prioritization, if that helps. Just that's an option. So, Commissioner Angel, I'll turn the floor back to you. Thank you.
I have 2 quick questions for Mr. Pettimaj. So we got more than $17.5 million the first time then?
It's $17,557,780.50.
No, we were supposed to get $35 million, but split in half is $17.5 million, right?
Yes, the second half comes 1 year later, the way it's situated.
But it's still based on $35 million?
Yeah, ultimately we'll get that much.
So we got a little extra. You just answered my question there, and that's why I was getting at the extra $57,780.50.
Now, the 35 was an estimate.
Okay.
It was an estimate, and then they, before they released the money, they refined those estimates to the penny, hence the 50 cents.
When you were talking about helping, Kent Conservation District is one that does a lot of stormwater maintenance, and they usually get funded a lot by Century 21 funds, and the list is so long and getting longer because they don't get enough money to get those projects up and done, and they're getting further and further behind. Is that something we could help the Kent Conservation District fund?
Again, any project that would qualify in the infrastructure realm, any project that would qualify for federal assistance through the revolving loan fund programs that are administered by DNREC would qualify for this funding as well. So that's basically the rule with respect to the water quality projects, and stormwater is part of that.
Any commissioners? Commissioner Buxton.
Just my thoughts, clearly the intent. I want it to be known too, there's something that's important. And it's, I think, technically over the last couple meetings, that I have rescinded my role as the most talkative member of this group. And I'll leave you to decide who has taken over that role. kudos to them. With that said, it's supposed to be a little jab fun there, not negative. The point that I'm making is this. If I was king for a day, what I would suggest that we do is this. Keep it simple tonight. Identify what is obvious, the low-hanging fruit, which I would suggest would be whatever it is that is inside the county that we were harmed with through COVID. We can control that. We know it's eligible, and we have the resources to identify that. So I think that's something we could chop today and agree to do, and not even define it. Just say, go find the expenses or the deficits created through COVID that were eligible to make the county, its government, whole. Step one. Secondary to that, what I would hope is that we move on to what we've all considered to be the next maybe pressing issue, which would be the economy locally. Employer, employee, a tenant or a landlord, a small business or a bigger business. But I don't think we make that decision. I would like to see us task maybe some of the folks that are in that business, like Alinda Parkowski and others, to go out and identify what would be the most useful way to utilize some of these funds, rather than us trying to come up with it on our own, spitballing ideas. I would like to see them kind of come up with some thoughts and ideas, to include stealing what maybe others are already thinking of doing, if it's a good idea. Third step, nonprofits. But let's ask them to help us out by not coming in with shotgun approach to requests. Encourage them maybe to come together, possibly the fire companies, the ambulance services, so that we don't have one jurisdiction asking for something way out here and someone else elsewhere. If they could solidify it and show their harm, that would be useful for us. We don't have to do that, but I think it would be useful for us at this stage. Same with the senior centers. Same with the other nonprofits. And this is where I'm done now, okay? The last one, and probably no question the most expensive part of this spending, is going to be, what do we do with the infrastructure projects? Where do we want to allocate those funds? I would suggest to each and every one of us that we're not early, that we're late in that spending and decision-making processes. I would encourage us to leave that money settled for moments while we look at other jurisdictions and learn from their mistakes, right? Learn from what they've applied to do, what made sense, what didn't, and then some of the best coaching I ever did was stealing other people's success. So I'm not here to debate. I put out what I think we should do. I get it that it'll probably morph in a different direction maybe, but there you have it. That's what I'd like to see done, And I'm done. Thank you.
Before I turn it over to Ms. Maston, I just wanted to comment on Commissioner Buxton. The only thing different from what he was saying is I'd like to see the essential employees taken care of after the county's made whole, whatever our shortfalls were in deficits, and we get that taken care of, because I think that's a positive in our county right there too. And then same thing with infrastructure. I've been trying to push for a fourth or a third a basin for the wastewater for future, for repairs or whatever we need. If we can add that to at the same time while we still got the land, I think that's another way of doing it. Ms. Maston.
Yeah, I totally agree with Commissioner Buxton and Alan Angel, and it's almost like they're reading my notes here. But the other things I'd like to add over and above sewer infrastructure, because I know we've had at least 4 major issues just since I got here in January. So it's a concern, because we had a major one in Smyrna, which has caused a lot of heartache. But in addition to the infrastructure, I think it's pertinent that we look at types of equipment that we might need, whether it be, I think, a prowler spreader is needed at the sewer facility. And I think we're budgeting some money for this year, but also next year. But also talk with Diana Gold and Susan and some of the other department heads to find out what their needs are. Because granted, we budget money year after year, but there may be some of these things that we could get sooner if there's a need that justifies the want. But I don't disagree with the approach that Commissioner Buxton has stated.
Commissioner Sweeney, I'll go right down the line.
Thanks, sir. So, Mr. Pettitage, quick question. So the second tranche, when it comes, do you perceive using the same 6 eligible spending categories for the second tranche, or?
Well, unless the law changes, that's what you can use it for.
Okay.
This is what the law says you're limited to do.
Whole amount, which would be?
Yes, yes.
So how many of these items that have been dropped on the table in the last 5 minutes can be pushed to the second tranche? You don't have to answer right now.
We haven't spent anything from the first tranche. But the thing, though, just generally saying, though, when Commissioner Maston mentions buying equipment and stuff like that, that's really contemplated in this. Okay. Infrastructure has to qualify under the Clean Water Act for water projects. And you can't say, well, yeah, but we need a tractor to do that. You can't pay for equipment that way. So just be cognizant of that. I mean, these are the limited. The goal here was really to lay out what the boundaries are on this, and then let you think within those boundaries.
So then would the process be to, if we think of something, are we going out and getting Delaware State Housing Authority, the Kent County Volunteer Firefighters Association to come in and make presentations to us, or are you going to put together a form, or?
I wouldn't suggest you run right out and talk to, what I think you really should do is come back. We need to have follow-up meetings and get ideas down that you want to explore further, and then let the staff at least begin to prepare some alternatives and maybe some concepts of how to do it. Because right now I'm not sure exactly where we want to go with this, but I've heard some that's helped small businesses. Okay, what's that going to look like? Is it going to be a grant program, a loan program? That sort of thing. So we need to get at least 4 saying, yeah, we want to pursue this, and then we can develop some ideas and bring it back for you. Make sense?
Commissioner Howell and then Commissioner Hall.
Thank you. Well, first of all, I assume that we're going to have to bring this issue to an actual vote as to whether we're going to accept the money or not. Sounds like it's already kind of like been accepted. I thought we were going to have a vote eventually, sometime, say yay or nay. I mean, isn't that the appropriate way to do it? We're talking about $35 billion here. We're just going to just do it without any formal declaration or anything?
Mr. Pettitage?
I'm not sure I understood the question, but we've already received half of it. It's in the bank. And, I talked back in March about this. I never heard anyone say, don't take the money. We qualify for the money. City of Dover qualifies for the money. Town of Smyrna qualifies for the money. Harrington's getting some. Milford's, unless they don't have a budget, almost every unit of government is getting something. The state of Delaware is getting almost $100 million. So, same with Newcastle County, like $102 million. Sussex, $45 million. So, there's money coming to everyone. And so, all I'm trying to do is get you to think about it.
I understand, Mike, and you've worked on this well, and I know that we've gotten a whole slew of emails. The stipulations and everything keep coming in, and they're not finished, right? I mean, we still don't know everything we need to know, right? I mean,
Yeah, I think we do. The interim final rule is not final until mid-July, but it's pretty clear, and that's basically, this is boiling it down.
okay, good enough. Well, you and I have discussed this, okay? And I fully expect and predict that we'll go through with this, receive all the money they appropriate and all that stuff. But it will not be with my support. I'll tell you why. I have a tendency to look at the big picture, whereas other people are more detail oriented, all right, more local. And I'll have you know that our United States government has put us $30 trillion in debt. $30 trillion. And it's like people just aren't concerned about that. And now what they're doing is they're doling out money to all kinds of people in counties and, you know, for all these humanitarian-looking projects. But the problem is they don't have the money. Now, where in the heck are they going to get this money? They're going to get it from one of two ways, or probably both, and maybe another way that I don't know of. One is they're going to borrow it. Lord, help us if they borrow it from China. That's a very real possibility. Whoever they borrow it from, it's still debt accrued, all right? The other thing they could do is inflate the money so they can spread it further. Now, the long-term results of that are going to be horrific. We could, in economic terms, we could literally implode in time. These debts are not going to go away. And these congressmen go into the House, vote on these bills, and walk away saying, oh, what a good boy am I. Well, guess what? They're not good boys. They're not good girls. They're doing a terrible disservice to us. And I, just as a matter of principle, don't want to have anything to do with this. So, you know, that's my position on it. I wish everybody had this position. I wish thousands of counties would say, don't give us any money. We'll work it out. Put it towards a deficit and leave us alone. But they're not doing that. They're grabbing the money because it's supposedly free, but it's not. And that's my position.
Commissioner Hall, then Commissioner Buxton.
Thanks, Commissioner Angel. So I agree with Commissioner Buxton. That's a good framework. Go ahead and make ourselves whole and add in the essential workers. I'll start again. So I agree with Commissioner Buxton's framework there. Make ourselves whole. Since we can quantify the essential workers, just go ahead and I think move forward on that. With labor and nonprofits, I think my opinion might be make it standardized and make it simple. I don't know if we want hundreds of presentations coming in for the next 1 or 2 years. You know, for particular things, I think if we just come up with a framework and publish that, saying, you know, if you feel that you've been harmed and you want to apply for this, here's how you do it. You know, with the nonprofits, you know, we could get 100 different ideas of how they want to do it, and then we'd have to parse through all of this. It may be better to just come up with an amount that's available for each of these to ask for in a grant and just dole it out rather than us. You know, I noticed at the state level, they committed a full-time position to managing this. And so the more requirements, the more stipulations, the more red tape we put on this, somebody at the county is going to have to weed through all these things, and it will consume a lot of personnel time, or we could make it as simple as possible. I mean, when it came to taxpayers getting their money, all you had to do was be a taxpayer, and the money showed up in your account. And we probably can't make it that simple, but I think we should make it as simple as possible. Last point is infrastructure is a good idea. If there's any way that we could expedite the pipe condition analysis, because we stretch out over a long period of time because of funding. And so if we can do that quicker to see what condition the large diameter or small diameter pipes are, that will give us, we know sooner what we need to prioritize there. So I just wanted to throw that out as an idea. Thanks.
Mr. Buckley.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Commissioner Angel, you know, in fairness to Commissioner Howe, right, and we haven't talked a lot about this. We've accepted it as kind of a fait accompli, that it is what it is. In fact, I articulated my thoughts on the best way to move forward. But I accept Commissioner Howe's challenge, because I think this setup is kind of unfair, right? Because it does challenge me. In fact, I believe it challenges some of you. When the county is receiving $35 million in the manner in which we are, it doesn't feel right. It isn't right. It just isn't. I'm allowed to say that. I don't have to be right. It's my own feelings. It doesn't feel right. It's not right. I mean, if you want to individually give each one of us $1 million, we can do a lot of good. So we're not arguing whether or not $35 million can do good. But we're also not arguing this is just made up money that we're getting, that all the jurisdictions are getting. We can't ignore that, we're just accepting it. And I'm allowed to have those thoughts. And I should articulate them at least one time in a public hearing, where I state very clearly for the record that if there was a motion on the floor to return the money and it received enough votes, I would be in favor of that. In fact, I'll state for the record right now, entertain a motion to return the funds. Anyone in favor, raise your hand. My hand is up. So we've got 2. It is what it is. So now we re-engage, we get back into the fight and address the issue of allocating the funds properly. So that's where I am. But I felt like and feel like, kudos to Commissioner Howe, that it should be okay to have an opinion and express it, because I don't think I'm wrong in this one. $35 million. $35 million. We got to figure out how to spend it. Right? All right. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Hall?
I'll just follow up to say that you probably had 2.5 hands there. Right? Because $35 million is a lot of money. And if we didn't have businesses and nonprofits in the county that were harmed by this, I would be the third hand. But I know that there are organizations that couldn't do fundraising, and that there were businesses that saw revenue loss, shut down. You know, when the governor says you can't open, then you can't open, right? So all of those entities were harmed. Does it take $35 million? I don't think so. So maybe at some point we look at returning some of it. I don't even know if that's possible, but I did want to, since we're having that discussion, I did want to say that I don't disagree entirely.
Commissioner Hall, that's why it would be nice to have the conversation. Well stated, clearly articulated, and you're absolutely right. The issue, the angst, is the $35 million. Maybe it's not $5 million. In fact, maybe $5 million is highly warranted to address your concerns. Maybe it's 10. But I venture to say we're going to figure out a way, and it's not a disrespect, gentlemen and lady. It is and is what it is. We're going to try and figure out a way to spend $35 million. It's going to do good. I get it. We're not going to buy Christmas presents. But the way that money's being spread about the country, that's not right. Anyway, thanks. Thanks for your time.
I have to jump in here too, Mr. Peddle, before I turn it over to you. And I understand what everybody's saying. And to some degree, I understand, because our kids are going to be paying this back for a while. But I would hope that due to the negativity of the businesses closing and everybody getting hurt and making them whole again and getting them back up and running, which we're all in favor of doing that. But at the same time, if we have money left over, I'll be the first one to say, let's give back what we don't use. Because I want to lower the debt, and we utilize the money for what it was supposed to be utilized. I think that's the purpose why I'm saying this. So, Mr. Pettimaj.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to encourage the commissioners to understand that there's a lot of needs in the community that aren't being met. Let's face that. And the bill talks very strongly and pointedly about building back stronger, building strong communities and neighborhoods, and particular emphasis on areas that have been disproportionately impacted by the pandemic, way more than the people sitting here, have been impacted. We need to think about that. You know, and I'm thinking when I'm hearing this about the federal government putting money, we wouldn't have a sewer treatment plant today if the federal government didn't make money available in the late 1960s to build that plant. And Levy Court took a big chunk of money to build the system from the federal government. That's the level of improvement that we need to be thinking about, not the small stuff. How do we make our community better? How do we deal with the poverty? We have poverty. How do we deal with people wandering streets with no place to live? You know, there's an opportunity here to do something we will never have again. And don't let it slip through our fingers. And don't spend it on things that really don't matter. We're going to do it anyway. You know, we have plenty of ways to fund sewer already. We do. Long-term debt. We do it all the time. I'm not saying don't do a sewer project, but if you're going to do one in a place that really needs it and we can't get it done otherwise, where we remove the debt from their payments back. You know, that's one of the hurdles that some of these poor communities have. Not only do they pay their sewer bill, but they also have to pay the debt back. It becomes a burden on places that are poor. Inferior water systems. We don't own water, we don't do water, but we have water systems in the county that have lead pipes. Get rid of them. Here's an opportunity. That's the level of thinking I think that this needs to be brought to, okay? Because there is a lot of needs in the community. And I'll stop here. I know off my soapbox. Thank you.
President.
Mike, what time frame are we supposed to look at as far as people being impacted? I know it starts March 3rd, 2020. Where has that time frame ended, or did it end? Is it just 2020?
No, it's currently still ongoing. The funding can be spent between now and December 31st, 2024. It has to be committed by then, and you have a 2-year after that to fully expend it. So like if you have made commitments by December 31st, 2024, that may go on for 2 more years. The end of everything is 2026, December. So that's basically it. And you know, we're looking at it from today's lens. We're not sure where we'll be 6-8 months from now with whether we're totally out of the woods with the pandemic or if there's some boomerang effect of it. You know, hopefully not. But I think when they developed this program, they allowed for that kind of time frame because of the potential.
So are we going to reimburse people as it's proven they were harmed, or do we wait to a specific time to pass out the checks?
Well, again, I think it depends on what you decide to do. If it's, just for example, if it's a grant program to businesses that were impacted, we just come up with, as Commissioner Hall was saying, the parameters of it, keep it as simple as possible, show your impacts, and we verify that and as best we can, just like we do other grant programs, and you can proceed. But and there may be other reasons to hold on for some other project that would come down later. And there shouldn't be a rush to spend all this right away, but it is meant to be put back into the community in positive ways.
Anybody else? Yes. Commissioner Buxton.
Thank you. We need to have these conversations. We should be allowed to have these conversations. It shouldn't be a back and forth about your feelings versus my fiscal sanity. It should not. Understand that. I don't think there's an argument up here about the ability to utilize some of the funds. It's a recognition that we're spending trillions of dollars. Yes, Washington, D.C. seems far away. It's a fantasy land. But it's in our laps. So it should matter. That's all. That's all I was trying to articulate. In a real world, we would do what we've always done with those sewer projects. We would figure out a way to budget it. We would figure out a way to partner with the federal government and to utilize local funds along with the actual customers' funds to make projects work. We've done it before, we'll do it again. This will happen. We're not arguing that. But it doesn't mean that it's right. It doesn't mean that it's a process that we need to emulate or that it's yay. That's all I was saying. I think you know that. So when we get on here and say poverty, never in my conversation there did I not say that I don't want to address poverty. But printing $35 million out doesn't fix poverty. That's all. Never said I didn't want to help sewer projects. Didn't say I want to help X, Y, and Z. That's all. Anyway, we don't need to continue down this hole, right? We had a good conversation tonight. I've articulated that I want to be in the fight, so I'm not going to take my ball and go home. It is what it is. All right, thanks.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we've had a nice discussion. We have to identify the most pressing, which we've given our opinions. We need to set some priorities and objectives. And I think we need to let leadership and Mr. Pedramaj have that discussion and then come back if need to move forth. Mr. Pedramaj, your idea, sir.
Well, I'm not sure where you want to go with this. I think we need to decide something at some point. And if it is a matter of getting thoughts on paper first, and then going through some type of prioritization process, but to just leave, I don't want 3 months to go by and then you come back and say, what are we doing with this? And I'll be like, well, I talked to you guys and I didn't get a sense that you wanted to do anything. There needs to be some forward progression. I'm not sure I'm hearing it yet, what we want to do.
Well, I was thinking like when we did our retreat, we put out our 5 most important points, and then we formulated that on talking points, what to move forth on. That was a written form. Everybody could see where we were going instead of just having a discussion. I was thinking maybe something like that so we can get an idea of the 4+ moving forth so we can get started and then go forth. That's what I was thinking of when they were talking, everybody was talking.
Mr. Angel.
Mr. Buxton.
Mr. Pedramaj, would you and the staff, would it be acceptable to identify all the areas of the county that have been harmed, the deficit that was created, and what that would look like in reimbursing that? Could you do that over the next, 2 weeks? Or a timetable that is acceptable to you?
I'm not sure I understood the question.
So one of the parameters is identifying deficits within the county's government that occurred related to COVID.
Sure.
Under an acceptable timetable, could you and the staff create what that budget would look like, what the costs are, so we could decide whether or not we want to support that? I think we would. So that's one. Secondary to that, could we develop a plan, you or others in that area, on what it would look like to make our employers and employees, tenants, others, whatever that might be, how we would partner with other programs to support reimbursing their harm, whatever that sounds like. We just had a conversation where some businesses potentially have been harmed. Could we do something like that? Could you maybe have a Linda Perkowski head up a committee to do that?
I think we certainly could explore it. I'm not sure of any programs that have been developed yet, but yeah, we can begin to, yeah.
Some kind of path that we could look at to allocate the funds in an efficient way and not willy-nilly, and not that overlapped other programs that are already being implemented. I think that addresses the employee or employer aspect, if there is any. Potentially, there's a lot of funds already out there that have made them whole. So, and that could be worked on moving forward. A big one that could be included in that, Commissioner Angel, would be, as you stated, the compensation. What's it called? The essential? How would that look, right? Would that be included in your task of giving us some information on how that looks, right? You'd want that included, correct?
Important part of it.
And I think those give you some clearing blocks. And then what's left? How quickly do we want to work towards the nonprofits? And how? And then lastly, the big ticket items. I just jumped in because we were floundering a little. I think at least at a minimum, we've got clearly an articulated path for harmed county government services, money, whatever, employee compensation, and then articulating with our business community on how some of these funds could make some of those folks whole. What would that look like? Does that help? Is that, Mr. Pettit-Demage, does that give you some direction?
I believe it does. Yes.
Purposely left some of the bigger tickets off. I've already stated, I didn't think we needed to get completely to those tonight. If somebody disagrees, then now by all means, it's your turn.
No, all I was trying to say is I like a paper trail, and a paper trail, and we all have our ideas and what's first, second, or third. They may switch here and there, but I just wanted to have something in writing. Or Mr. Hall.
Thanks, Commissioner Angel. Well, I agree. We don't want 3 months to go by. Why don't we just make this a running item under this committee every month? We revisit it. I mean, just tonight we got the 6 categories. So it's been hard to, well, I mean, I've got plenty of ideas, but it's been hard to understand what the limitations are, what the framework looks like until now. So now that we have this, each month we come back and just sort of regroup ideas, progress report, see where we're at, and just wanted to throw that out there.
I was hoping that we could do it quicker than 2. So, but we haven't. Leadership hasn't talked about it yet either to bring it up an idea. So, but if you took the top 2 or 3 items that we all talked about that we're pretty much intertwining with, and move that forth, we know exactly where everybody wants to go. So. The other items are still dangling, if you will, but they'll get addressed. But just like our RFI project, it was going to be 7-8 months down the road, and we got it done in 7 weeks. Things are going to get done. I think leadership and this government body is going to make sure. And with Mr. Pettit-Demage's due diligence and everything he's doing, he's going to make sure it gets done too. So. I just wanted, like I said, I wanted a paper trail. I'm a visual person. I'm not one of the millennials that uses their phone all the time because I use my hands to work in my business, and I can't go to my phone all the time, but I can read a piece of paper and work at the same time. That's just the way I am. So that's why I was saying that. Just to let everybody know.
Mr. Angel?
Yes, sir.
Real quick. Remember, the funds that are going in have to be purposed in 3 years' time, correct, Mr. Pettit-Dimash? Purposed out of our account in 3 years' time, or purposed in 3 years?
We have till the 2024 to either spend or have committed, and the term runs out in 2026. So like if you have a contract or something that's live by 2024, the end of the year, it can run 2 more years and you can continue to use the money.
That's all I'm articulating, is if we get some of the low-hanging fruit out of the way in 6 months' time, 3 months' time, but 6 months' time, you still got a long time to really learn what others are doing and spend wisely the remainder of the funds. You know, so I don't want to race, but anyway, thanks.
Any other comments? Seeing none? Any public comments or anybody online?
I see no hands raised on the WebEx call at this time.
Public comment?
And I'm a little bit unsure. I'm going to call this my non-county hat. I'm not the Public Works Director at the moment, but I wanted to mention something to you all in terms of the households we're looking to help that may have been affected by COVID. I wanted to mention the idea of utility assistance support. Of course, you know that I'm very much into the sewer utility, but there are folks out there who, during COVID, who've been impacted. You've got water, sewer, gas, electric. There's multiple utilities out there. If the county was interested in, and I understand the debt issue with the federal government, but if the county was interested in supporting some of those residents, those low-income residents who've been adversely impacted, I would suggest that we might want to consider a utility assistance support program. Not necessarily that we run something ourselves, but we could find perhaps an agency that already does that. Catholic Charities, First State Community Action Group, Southeast Rural Community Assistance Program, someone that we could partner with to provide utility assistance support to those communities who were adversely impacted during COVID. Any questions?
Anything else?
That's it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other public comments? Seeing nobody move forth, back to you, Mr. President.
Thank you. That concludes our committee meetings for this evening. I have one announcement. The county offices will be closed this Friday in celebration of Juneteenth. The state and Sussex County are also closed. I believe Newcastle is too. So we will be closed on Friday. And with that being said, we are adjourned.